joining us in our Going Digital series. I am Shweta Kothari. We have been joined today by Santosh Nair. Santosh specializes in live graphic scribing or recording. He has been bringing stories of transformation to life across various countries in the world through his deep expertise in graphic facilitation or graphic recording. He will be, of course, sharing more of his experience today. Santosh, thanks very much for taking time out. You know, when I heard the word graphic scribing, I was a little perplexed. To begin with. I didn't know much about it, and I'm sure not many of our viewers at the moment do. So if you can quickly run us through what is live graphic scribing and what are the career prospects we have in graphic recording?
Sure, absolutely. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and to be able to speak about graphic facilitation or live graphic scribing or graphic recording is indeed something that I would love to do, because there's so many different versions of what it is. So having gone through the journey myself and being called a doodle artist, to being called an artist, to being called a cartoonist, to some people calling me graphic recorder, I thought it's apt for me to explain what it is. So basically, graphic recording is capturing conversations graphically. And when I say capturing conversations graphically, it is not a documenter role that documents every statement. It is about how do you capture the group's wisdom and the conversations and the ideas that are being exchanged, and how do you, as a very neutral facilitator, connecting all these dots and these ideas that are shared. So and it is a combination of art. It is a combination of understanding the context of what's being spoken. It is a combination of capturing what is not spoken. So being very actively involved and listening, and then taking that and connecting it into a graphic. I'll tell you what it's not. It's not a cartoonist. It's not an illustrator. It's not a graphic designer. And you get called all these names because there is no clarity out there, especially in newer markets, as to what this is. So having cleared what it is not, what it is actually a very neutral person standing with you, involved with you as a sponsor in a meeting, or in a conference or in a brainstorming session, and listening to what is happening, listening to the messages being exchanged, listening to the ideas being exchanged, and there, without any biases, is converting that conversation into impactful art form, which is a combination of art, text, quotes that are being shared, and how this person ties everything together, so that at the end of the session, it is a group work or a group illustration that emerges, and everybody finds context and substance and relevance to what gets emerged. So that is the role of a graphic facilitator or a graphic recorder.
Right. I remember,
and
we were talking about the practical implications, and you said I don't want the art to be limited to a hobby. So perhaps if you could shed some light on the practical implementations of graphic recording.
Absolutely. And I truly believe, because, art at the moment is looked as a hobby. And if this becomes a way for you to communicate, not only the thoughts you have within yourself that you want to communicate to the world using simple graphics and illustrations and storytell, and at the same time use the same techniques to capture the conversation that are happening around you. So so what that does, it doesn't limit itself to a hobby. So when you have a wider canvas, you can use it in school, in academics, in business, in conversations of people, in personal conversations. But if this becomes the way you do things and the way you communicate, it rises above being just a hobby. And hence I feel that it should not be restricted to a hobby. It can be, you can take it as a profession, or you can be the way you simply work, simply do things. You don't have to be a graphic recorder, but you can use the power of visuals to communicate.
Right. So how does then one develop an expertise like you have at the moment? Because I'm sure a lot of people who are looking to make this, a life a life's work or something that they can earn money and bread and butter from, want to develop expertise in the field. So how do one go about then developing expertise?
Sure. So in my experience, there are two ways to become a graphic recorder. So one way is you're an arts graduate, you're great at art, and you think, oh, this is a great way to storytell, and so let me try it. And then you get into graphic recording, okay? And that's not the way I followed. I came to this field via context because I was a business analyst. So what that did for me is being in various client places, listening to conversations, and understanding when a client says, oh, there's a conversation of one paragraph, you know that there are 3 sentences that they are harping on, and that seems to be the main highlight of what they want to convey. And I came from that angle, and then of course art was a hobby, and then it all came together for me, understanding the context and overlaying art on it. And I believe it's that worked for me. It doesn't mean that that's the only way it'll work, but one must understand that it is not about the art. It is the idea is, you know, as I was telling you, it's not about drawing Mona Lisa and going out of the room and having all the participants looking at it and saying, okay, where should I place this above my dining table, around my dining table or my hall? So if that becomes the relevance of what you do, then that's not graphic recording, and hence only art will not help you. So you need to approach it from a context. Do I understand what they're really saying or what they're really not saying? Am I able to contextualize? Am I able to convert this complex conversation they're having into a simple form? And that is the power of graphic recording. When you simplify a complex subject, and everybody has something to take away, and when you approach it that way, what it does is there is value in graphic recording, and it does not become a novelty. Because I feel it is an absolute disgrace to graphic recording if it is used as a novelty. And I've had experiences and challenges where you know, oh, we need to do something different. Let's graphic record. And those are the times when I say, sorry, I don't think you need me. You may need somebody who's great at juggling, because that would be more entertaining for the audience than me. But what you need me is if everybody has a takeaway from what gets generated, and it is not my work. If you approach it as a collective group work, where unless people speak, I don't have anything to draw. I don't have anything to capture. Unless people speak truthfully, I don't have a truthful illustration to leave behind. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a combined art. And once the sponsor and we all believe why we are using graphic recording, it just raises the level and the value of what graphic recording is. So it's a very convoluted way, and maybe not a simple way to explain, but unless you experience it.
And I understood it when I started researching, you know, very primary basic research to understand what is graphic recording. What I understood is perhaps you're using art to communicate and making it simple through your art. You're making a complex communication simple through your art. That was my takeaway. And correct me if I'm wrong there, if there is more to it than what I took away.
No, absolutely. So that is the foundation of why you graphic record. Because, you know, sometimes you are in events where you have an array of people, right from, you know, juniors to the senior management. And how do you make a complex conversation easy to consume for the juniors, but also elevate the understanding of a junior to the depth of the idea shared by a senior or a leader? So how do you straddle between these two worlds and make it relevant for all? So in that case, what you said is absolutely right. How do you convert complex into simple ways so that everybody takes something away? And I believe that also as a graphic recorder, one must bring your own influences in, because you know, you can have fun with it, make it contextual, make it topical. It could be about you know, a series that you watched and there's a conversation that happened that reminds you of a very popular series. Integrate it in some ways into your graphic recording, so the people who get it will have a smile on their face because they got the way behind what you had done and how it relates to the conversation. So it can be a very consuming, a very exciting field to be in.
Okay, so can you perhaps tell us when you did that, when you actually took a conversation from an everyday context and then put it into your work? So one of the interesting projects that you may have worked at in the recent past.
Sure. So I see there are two questions in there. One is how do you integrate the outside world in?
Right.
But I will start with the other one, which was an very interesting project. And it was about a group of architects, and generally architects who are thinking about sustainable architecture. And these people were coming from all over the country. They were meeting in in a museum. The setup was a museum in Delhi. It was a 3-day workshop. And every architect had worked on his or her own design. And generally in the creative field, you find people work in those silos and are so close to what they have developed. And here is a platform where they're coming and sharing. This is what I did, and they need to be open to the challenges that are thrown to them. And imagine you have had this baby for 8 months. You've been working on that project, and then you get challenged at the end of 8 months. So the setup was kind of walking on eggshells, where I, as a graphic recorder, had to not only look at the challenges but also the positive aspects of what the design was. And what happens there was we have 15 or 20 architects, and we had 2 minutes for each architect to finish their story. And imagine being able to capture the key highlights of that and then reproduce it for the others to comment on. So that was a very challenging setup because time was short. You needed to understand the content, and the content could be very complex, and it ranged. So some were talking about architecture in the hills, to some talking about architecture using clay. So how do you still do justice to them and still do not hurt anybody's ego? And so that was a very challenging project for me. But it again goes back to how the sponsor made sure that graphic recording was not, oh, by the way, here is a graphic recording of what you said. We became part of the team that was showcasing the idea. So when that happened, there was more camaraderie, there was more belief, there was more trust amongst all of us. So that worked for that project of ours. So that was one challenging project. Another one, and the advantage of a graphic recorder is that you get to be in different worlds every time. Of course, there's certain worlds like leadership forums, etc., which could be the same anywhere you go. But imagine today working with a bunch of architects, tomorrow working with a bunch of doctors and the government. They're sitting at a round table and they're saying, how do we integrate this particular ointment in home births? Because there's a high child mortality rate when it's a home birth. And you don't have an understanding of chlorhexidine is. And you're graphic recording what their solution is. And those are the times when a graphic recorder needs to remind himself or herself as to why am I here? Am I here to tell them that I have captured chlorhexidine and the formula just as is? Or am I here to elevate my understanding as to what are they here really for? They are here really to say that if we use this particular ointment, the child mortality rate will go low. Governments could integrate this and have programs about it. And once you put that hat on, the stress of not understanding what the chemical formula is, but understanding why are people coming together. And I believe if all graphic recorders, as part of their skilling, understand the context and why are people coming together and why are they having this conversation, if that is the primary goal, how am I contributing by being there? And if that drives you, then I think we do justice to the work. So another challenge which I learned to overcome was to have that mindset. Yeah.
I can't imagine sitting with doctors one day and architects the other day and still trying to understand what they're saying all at the same time. I do want to understand from you, is that intimidating? Because as you rightly said, it took you some time. So in the initial years when you were still figuring your way out, was it intimidating to you?
It was, but luckily, in my journey, what happened was I spent about 5 years graphic recording in a very protected, safe environment, because I used to work with an IT management company, and the kind of clients we got there were uh, had kind of similar topics to discuss. So which made me comfortable in being on my own and listening to the conversation. And so when I got out into the world on my own, I got exposed to other sectors. What kept me confident was, I'm here to listen. I am here to listen to people. I'm not here to listen to a titled set of people, be it a CEO, be it a doctor, be it a minister, or be it an architect, or be it a child in an NGO who's talking about, this is the ideal world for me when I go to school. Um, so when that happened, all I see is people. And when all you see is people, and all you see is people having conversation, it it takes away that fear factor. Though there will always be butterflies in your tummy, and I think that's a good thing, because when I used to be a radio jockey, and I remember one of my seniors telling me, when you're at the studio, it's good to have that butterfly in your stomach, because it just pushes you to do better. And so we tend to have these butterflies in our stomach, but it's okay. Because as I said, if we believe that it is not my art and I'm not being judged for it, it is our collective art, and everything is fine. The world is beautiful then.
All right. So that does bring me to a very important question. What advice do you have for youngsters who are perhaps going to follow suit, who are going to do what you are doing at the moment, and who may be a little scared and who don't really understand graphic facilitation? What is one advice you have, or a piece of advice that you have for such youngsters?
Sure. Um, so, I think it's not only about youngsters. It is about anybody at any point in life where they realize that I want to do this. The first thing we end up doing is looking at others' work, and there's nothing wrong with it. Even in my journey, I didn't have a teacher, because in India we do not have a course that you take. You learn from experience, you learn from seeing others. And initially I started questioning myself, oh, am I doing this right? Am I capturing it right? But the answer came to me is there's no right and no wrong in graphic facilitation. We could have two graphic facilitators or graphic recorders standing and listening to the same conversation, but having different styles of capturing it. But what it needs to be common is going back to that Mona Lisa. As long as we are not drawing that Mona Lisa, as long as we are listening, we don't have to fear. So there's nothing to be scared of, because it is not comparing my style versus your style. Your styles need to be different, and finally your style will emerge. And so that's one thing. There's no right and no wrong. I think if we focus on the substance, because when I started off, I remember a comment from a facilitator when I was working in the safe environment. He told, Santosh, I think you have got the style right, but we need to focus on the substance. And that's when it hit me, saying that, oh, am I getting lured by the beauty of what gets captured versus the content? So form is important, so is also the substance. So if you're focusing on both and balancing both, I don't think you need to fear. And just being true to what is being exchanged. So practicing at home, listening actively to what's happening without using your biases. I don't think there's anything to fear, and anybody can get into this profession or a way of working by keeping these things in mind. No biases. There's no right. There's no wrong. Everybody has a different style.
Right. No right, no wrong. But I do want to understand from you, how can digital transformation program actually leverage this expertise?
Um, so that's so to me that is uh, uh, an evolution of graphic recording in itself, because what graphic recordings first started was in brainstorming sessions and transformational sessions, where when you collectively get these ideas captured and people are having these transformational conversations, and then you have this entire graphics that comes up, it does something to you within. What has changed is only the medium. So graphic recording continues to be part of transformational program, and the only thing will change is I would be doing it digitally. I would be just getting on to, as I said, another medium. My canvas is different, but as long as the spirit of what you do as a graphic recording remains the same, it's kind of seamless in a digitally transformed world.
Right. Santosh, thank you very much for sparing time. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Pleasure speaking to you too, Shweta.
Learned a lot, Santosh, and honestly, I didn't know that much about the subject itself, but it's an absolutely enlightening conversation. If a person like me who has absolutely no idea of graphic recording designing can learn so much, I'm sure those who are interested will have a lot to benefit from this conversation.
Absolutely, it's as I said, it's a pleasure to talk about this, because it's something that happened to me, and I wish it happens to all those people who want to get away from capturing and communicating in known methods and using a complete different method. All I want to leave is one thought, as a graphic recorder, and I believe that's been a foundation in the way I approach graphic recording. So there's this movie called Fana, and the last scene of that movie is when the actress Kajol tells the little boy, saying that it's easy to distinguish between the right and the wrong, but it's tougher to distinguish between two rights. And in graphic recording, if you stick to the fact that there could be two ways for me to communicate using this art form, which is the most impactful art form? Will it be a light bulb or will it be a chandelier? And if the answer is a chandelier is the one you have to draw, then that will be the most impactful way and the most truthful way in which you can capture and communicate what's happening around you. So that's all I have to say.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much, Santosh. Thank you.